Hi guys, my name is Dami and I will be discussing concrete and abstract words. What is the dual coding theory? This cognitive theory is about expanding knowledge through both verbal association and visual imagery. It explains that people are able to recall information faster and learn quicker when paired with images and words. For example, if you were to think about the word Twitter, you're able to recall the information faster because you can hear the words and also picture the symbol of the bird. Same thing with Instagram. You can picture the icon and hear the word Instagram, which will make it easier for you to recall the information. On the lower part of the screen, you can see like a diagram that basically explains it. So we hear the word and we see the words. Hearing is a verbal processing and seeing is a nonverbal processing. Both of these combined together, integrated together, will equal knowledge, which is what we're aiming to do in the dual coding theory. Here in this image, I just thought it'd be nice for us to have examples of what concrete and abstract nouns are. So concrete nouns are things that we can see and hear and just know what it is. So like here, there's a book, there's a tree, and there's a car, and we can detect it with all five senses. While abstract nouns on the other side are things that we cannot detect using our five senses. So like love, knowledge, we cannot like. There's no picture to what love is because that's a very subjective experience. There's no picture to what knowledge is because that can be different across different spectrums. History. The dual coin theory was coined by Alan Pavio. He believed that people could learn in two distinct ways, through the processing verbal and imaginal representation. According to his theory, mental representation are associated with either verbal or nonverbal symbolic nodes, retain properties of the concrete psychomotor events in which they are based. Crows and Mars conducted a study. The aim of the study was to look at the speed and the accuracy of lexical decision for concrete and abstract nouns. The researcher conducted 3 experiments to determine whether there would be a condition under which concrete and abstract differences would be explained by lexical decision task. In addition, whether the patterns of differences were more consistent with a single or multiple memory system, so they tested common and special purpose memory systems. In lecture 2, if anyone remembers, we talked about the DRC model, and I believe that this model can also clarify and put words into pictures about the dual coding theory model, which is that concrete words and nouns are easier for people to process and make lexical decisions about. And this is done through the activation of the orthographic input lexicon and the semantic lexicon. So orthographic would be the word and semantic would be the imagery. That abstract words would only be the orthographic input. So it would only activate the orthographic input lexicon, which is why the semantic and the orthographic input are in red and just the orthographic input is in green. The researchers titled the first experiment Lexical Decision for Pure Word Lists. The researchers had 2 research questions. The first was whether a word concreteness influences lexical decision time, and the second question was whether a similar word frequency effect for concrete and abstract words existed. So if concrete words could be recognized using the special purpose lexicon, which would be the semantic and the orthographic input lexicon showed in the previous slide, then the dual coding theory would exist and expect that the frequency of the concrete words to differ from the frequency of the abstract words. Methods and results. The researchers had 16 undergrad students serve as participants. The dependent variable would be the concrete and abstract words, and the dependent variable would be the participants who were getting the different blocks of words. This experiment was a between subject study where participants were either in a abstract word block or concrete word block. The researchers presented the students with words for 200 milliseconds and told them to either say yes and no if the words felt real and it was relatable to real words, and to do this as fast and accurate as possible. The results show that lexical decision for concrete words were slightly faster and more accurate than lexical decision for abstract nouns. To give a visual representation of the results, here we have a screenshot of the results in a graph format to help better understand it. So on the left side, we have the mean reaction time, and on the bottom we have word frequency class, and then on the left side we have mean percentage error, but we would focus more on the left side. And it shows that concrete nouns, which is in the solid lines, are have less reaction time than abstract nouns, which is in the dashed lines. And as the word frequency is less and less, there's an interaction between the two. The researchers labeled the second experiment lexical decision for mixed word lists. The researcher conducted this experiment because the first experiment did not account for concreteness effect in lexical decision reliable over both subject and items because concrete and abstract words were presented on separate lists. So, for this experiment, they had 16 undergrad students as their participants, and this experiment was a within subject experiment where participants judged mixed block of both words of concrete and abstract words. The results from experiment 2 produced a pattern of similar results obtained from experiment 1. And remember, in experiment 1, the conditions were separate, so they had a separate group for abstract and they have a separate group for concrete words. So according to this logic, this similarity can take into account that common lexical system is shared by both abstract and concrete words because because the results are similar. If we look at this diagram, we can see that reaction time is on the left, word frequency class is at the bottom, and mean percentage errors on the right side. But as usual, we'll focus on the left side of things. And here, concrete word is also represented in solid lines, and abstract words are represented down in dashed lines. And you can see there is an interaction at the word frequency of 2, which is probably why the researchers suggested that abstract and concrete words both use a common model of memory because of the interaction and because the researchers switched between concrete and abstract word list was the title for their third experiment. The researcher tested the prediction made by the dual code and common code model of lexicon decision in the third experiment. The dual code and common code theory made different predictions about what should happen under these conditions. If concrete word had a dual lexical representation, and presenting them first in the experiment may allow a special purpose memory storage, and then being transferred to the other list, which would be the abstract words, will cause a disruption, which will make there be a delay in the decision making. However, if the abstract word was presented after the concrete words, then there would be no difference because both types of words will be recognized and have the same lexical processing and representation. In this study, there were 16 undergrad students who served as the participants. The difference between this study and the other study is that participants were asked to pay more attention to the words they because they would be tested on it later. Therefore, the result for this experiment showed that when lexical decision about concrete noun follows lexical decision about abstract noun, there is a clear effect for concreteness. However, when abstract follows concrete noun, the decision about the abstract noun was a little bit faster than that of the concrete noun, but the differences were small. We examine figure 3 to also help us better understand the previous result from the previous slide. So as we can see, we have word frequency class on the bottom, we have mean reaction time on the left side, and we have mean percentage error on the right side. Mean percentage error will not be our focus for today, so we won't be looking at that. But on the left side, we have the interactions and we have what we're trying to understand. And as we can see, when concrete words are first, when concrete nouns are first, it's represented by the solid lines. When abstract nouns are first, however, it's represented by the dashed line. And as you can see, when abstract nouns are first, there is no interaction, which means that there is no effect, which is consistent with the idea that semantics is not being used. However, when concrete words are first, there is an interaction and an effect, which suggests that the idea that semantic is being used. Using the DRC model, we can explain what happened in the previous slide. So in the previous slide, we learned that if you bring abstract words first, there will be no interaction and no effect, which supports the idea that semantics is not being used, which is why there is an X between semantics and orthographic input lexicon. So when abstract words are presented first, the abstract noun was a little faster than when concrete nouns, but the difference, as we see, is not a lot. So using the DRC model to explain the results from the previous slides, as you can see in the red, the results is consistent with the idea that if lexical decision about concrete noun follows lexical decision about abstract noun, then there is a clear effect, which should support the interaction and the effect that we saw in the graph early on. And in addition, it will also support the idea that this dual coding theory as a special purpose memory system rather than just a common purpose system. Conclusion: all the result from this article is compatible with the dual representational models of lexical memory. The findings from this experiment can tell us that concreteness effect in lexical decision are dependent on the order of representation in concrete and abstract words. When concrete words precedes abstract word, there is a speed and accuracy advantage for lexical decision about concrete words. However, when abstract words precede concrete words, there is no difference in speed and accuracy for lexical decision for both types of words. The representation of abstract words, why emotions matter. I chose this topic or this paper because last week we talked about the role that emotions can play. So I just thought it would be interesting to examine the role that emotions play within this context of abstract and concrete words. The purpose of this study was to investigate the adequacy of the dual coding theory and the context availability model put in place in order to explain representation and processing difference between concrete and abstract words. The researchers titled the first experiment the constructness effect, testing the dual coding theory and the context availability hypothesis. In this experiment, the researchers looked at simple, abstract, and concrete words that have been matched with imageability and context availability and investigated the reaction time. Method. The researchers had 58 English speakers serve as participants. The researchers presented participants with a string of words for 2000 milliseconds and told them to answer as fast and as accurate as possible. The researchers tested the words using a 7-point Likert scale to test how easy it is for people to come up with context based on the given words, and when looking at concreteness based on its association to real things. The result from experiment 1 shows that abstract words were processed faster than concrete words. This would reject the dual coding and the context availability model. The researchers titled the second experiment "The Abstractness Effect, Testing the Role of Affective Associates." The difference between experiment 2 and experiment 1 is that experiment 2, the researchers presented the participants with neutral words to test whether the differences were due to the affective associations. Methods. There was 46 undergrad psychology students who served as the participants. The researchers presented participants with a string of words for 2000 milliseconds and asked them to answer whether it was concrete or abstract as fast and as accurate as possible. In addition, the researchers tested neutral words using the valence rating between 4.5 and 5.75 on a 9-point scale. Results. The results show no abstractness effect was observed in this experiment using neutral words, thus supporting the suggestion that the apparent abstractness advantage in experiment 1. And if you remember in experiment 1, the results from that found that abstract words were processed faster than concrete words. In the third experiment, the researcher chose a set of words that covered a full range of emotional arousal. There were 47 undergrad psychology students who were English speakers in the experiment. The result of the experiment was that abstract is higher due to the fact that it is related to affective association. From this experiment, we can see that although it initially contradicted the dual coding theory, this was due to the greater degree of affective association with the abstract words. Altogether, the papers reviewed have supported the dual coding theory and the importance of how we process information, both concrete and abstract words. Thank you guys for watching the presentation. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to know if there's any questions now.